I will just wrap up the session with some closing remarks. So to just try to provide you with the take-home message, but I think the messages were already quite well discussed and explained by the previous speakers. So basically, we learned today that infants need to learn about food, and they really need guidance from their parents to learn how to eat, and from a very early stage on. So I think that's really something that has to be understood, that parents are there to guide the child in their eating behavior. That's a very one key point. How does this learning take place? It can start at the breast or even before in utero through maternal consumption of healthy foods. And breastfeeding provides a very positive context for learning about flavors of food and also learning about other aspects. We didn't mention that, but breastfeeding is also maybe a context in which the child learns to self-regulate food intake because the decision relies more on the child than on the mother. We also learned that learning takes place at complementary feeding, in particular to know what to feed or what to eat. So complementary feeding is really a window of opportunity to educate infants to eat and like a variety of healthy foods, in particular fruits and vegetables. We learned that early sensory experience and variety at complementary feeding can influence food acceptance for several years, in particular from the study from Andre Meyer. And we also learned that when tasting or smelling new foods, children can make faces, but parents should continue offering these foods for learning to take place. And that's a very important point, I think. So keep trying is a very important message. And I think many parents recognize the importance of keep trying to educate children, either in other aspects of education, for instance, language education. When we want our child to say hello, goodbye, thank you, we are ready to repeat the message several times. So we should be thinking probably the same about food. If we want children to eat healthy food, we should be ready to let them the opportunity to learn for several opportunities. So at complementary feeding, there's also learning taking place about how to feed and the way in which food can be provided to children. And I like very much the message that was highlighted by Kimberly Mallon about responsive feeding that parents should provide and children should decide. That's very easy to say and very easy to remember. That's very hard to do in practice. And I always like to say also that education in terms of feeding is not an exact science, and we know the theory very well, but we know in practice it's more difficult to apply, and especially more difficult to apply consistently. And there are always occasions on which it's easy not to follow the rules. So I think we should keep this simple idea in mind and trying to apply it or have parents apply it. So also one very important thing, I think, is to listen and trust the children. And we've heard many questions today that were very interesting in this regard, because we can hear that parents are not always ready to trust their children. They trust they know. They think they know, so they trust themselves, but they don't want to trust the children. But children know their internal signals. They know when they are hungry, when they are not hungry. And we have to respect this and respect their appetites, sometimes their specific aversions and the level of appetite. As was also mentioned by Dr. Fries, they have a smaller stomach than adults. We have to remember this, and sometimes we tend to forget about this. So they should be encouraged to provide autonomy to the children, let children self-feed, avoid emotional feeding, of course, again, easy to say, difficult to do. In some situations, it has a very short-term positive effect, so it's hard to not to do it. And of course, be a role model for your child. Don't expect your child to behave in a way you don't behave. That's also very simple, but very important to remember. And then to help parents cope with picky eaters, again, keep trying. and vary the preparation, textures, and types of food that are provided. Again, model eating the food, provide choice, and also involve children in preparation, as was highlighted by Isa. It's possible to do, even avoiding a mess in the kitchen. So I hope this will be foods for thought for you and for your patients. I hope that you learn during this session how to help children to learn about new foods and eating behavior. So maybe we can open this to a few more questions, if there are still questions in the room. Okay. So I think if we have left all your questions answered, we did well. So thank you for your very keen attention. I think we had a great audience today, so I want to thank you all. And I will just remind you to come back tomorrow for more about what children eat, and I'm sure we will have very interesting debates tomorrow again. Thank you very much, and good afternoon.